Okay, so welcome everybody to electronic checker training. As I mentioned before, the Zoom option we made available to seasoned electronic checkers, um, and that is because we had very limited space here in town hall. I'm in the IT room. I just did a class, but if you look behind me, you can kind of see how some of the computers are wrapped in plastic, and that is because we're only allowed to use half of the computers, which means train 6 people at a time, whereas usually we train 12 and have a couple of folks in the back, so up to 14. So we're doing only 6, which means I'm doing this class a lot. So but this is the only one I'm recording, and I will be taking the recording, posting it to YouTube, and linking it out from our webpage. So if you have questions, you can always review the class. And when I send you the reminder link, once that's all uploaded, we will also be sending you a link to a Zoom Q&A next week. So if you have additional questions, it's going to be a joint Q&A with paper and electronic checkers together. Okay, in the spirit of cooperation, which pervades everything we do. And so you're more than welcome to come to that. I'm not sure what day it is, but you're going to be getting an email reminder. So I'm going to share my screen. And first thing I wanted to do is, as a reminder, I wanted to point out our Town of Greenwich webpage, greenwichct.gov/vote. If you are on that page and you click on I want to work at the polls, we have a section, poll worker training materials. And by position, we have put what you need to watch. So here's the official checker training recorded last week, and what it is you can read. So you see electronic checker, the watch is coming soon. The read are the 2 handouts that we normally hand out in this meeting, basically the first 2 documents. I really wouldn't worry about this big 3-hour presentation. So just these 2 here, okay? And so we'll be filling this up as the week goes on. Recorded training will be on Saturday, which gives people a week to review those before Election Day. So let's get right into voter checklist. So you will recall, as seasoned checkers, that you'll get there. The moderator will give you a, I'll stop sharing, right? The moderator will give you a notebook computer with the streets that you're going to be working on. It'll be something like A to M and N to Z. Most polling places in this kind of election will have 2 lines. We do have a few that'll have 3 lines. So whatever the case is, you'll find that line. You'll open up your notebook and you'll find 6 things. You'll find an orange card, which lists all of the items, like a packing slip that's in the computer case. You'll find the computer. You'll find the power adapter for the computer. You'll find a mouse pad. You'll find a mouse, and you'll find a surge protector. Okay, so all of the things that came out of that black bag, that card is to remind you to put them into the black bag at the end of the night. Okay, please don't leave the surge protector down below. Please put all of those things back in the bag. They all fit nicely with room to spare. So you will unpack your suitcase. There'll be power running under your desk. You'll just need to plug the computer in. And we ask that you do that as early as possible. If you're going to, have a cup of coffee or have your breakfast, get that started beforehand. Because what we have found, and it won't occur so much in this election, but we really need to get people into the practice, because in a busy election season where there are lots of new people registering and a lot of absentee ballots, it takes a while for that computer to sync with all that data. These computers were all programmed, and all the data that's in them is from the 15th of October. So it's got to bring any new data in between the 15th and the 2nd. In the case of the presidential election, that was more than 1,000 voters that had to be reconciled, plus those who moved out of town, et cetera. So if you get that computer up and running, and if you had been here to get the paper version of the manual, we put a big pink sticker on it that said, please make sure your computer is up and running by 5:40. Okay. And I'm going to tell you specifically what I mean when I say up and running. Up and running means that you have turned it on, you've clicked, on the little icon so that you now see the blue screen. And share my screen again. So you see your desktop, and as you know, you only have one icon on that computer. You double click on that icon. That loads voter checklist. When you get to this point and you start, this says poll book data sync in progress. Okay, and it will continue to do this. Your screen may reload a few times, etc. This is where you need to be, that we consider the computer on and synchronizing. Okay, so that's where you need to be by 5:40 in the morning. At that point, take any breaks you need, etc. You've got 20 minutes until you need to complete the rest of the process. So as you know, on election day, you're going to see a live election, and that will be the only thing seen on the computer. Right now, I'm using a computer configured for test elections. And so you can actually see we did a test election on the 19th. I just finished the text election an hour ago, but we had it dated the 20th. And now I have one more set here with today's date. So it's now 3 minutes before 6 o'clock. So we should complete getting the computer set up. We do that by clicking Start Election. Now, you'll all remember, I don't ask you to take a lot of notes during this class, but if you have the handouts, the one place I ask you to write something down is that when you see this backup flash disk warning and click Continue, you're going to see here a list of drive letters. On election day, you should see a drive Z, and that is the backup disk that we have put in specifically for the election. You need to, if you're making notes in the manual or you're going to print that out again, you need to remember to select drive Z and then click Continue. Since I'm not on one of my computers, I'm just going to click C and continue here and start the election. Okay, I am sitting at a computer representing District 4. So all of these streets that I see are streets in District 4. And unless it's a street that extends through multiple districts, you won't see it on any of the other computers anywhere in town. So we're basically going to go through the 4 possible scenarios that you have to deal with on a daily, per election, in order to handle the different kinds of voters. And the first, which is the vast majority of those situations, is simply checking off a voter. The voter will announce their street, the street number, and their name. So if I'm checking off Inga Stempian here, I simply highlight the checkbox, click on it, and in a couple of seconds, she's checked off. I could then go on to my next voter. And so on. Just want to see something here about it. I'm looking for District 4. I'm looking for a street that has apartment buildings. I don't know if there is any in District 4. maybe on Water Street. No. So what I was showing folks in the class when I was on a District 1 computer, I was going to 1/2 Bowling Place, and that is an apartment building. It's the Muse, and if you click on that, you see all sorts of different unit numbers, and you can find a voter either if they announce their unit number, and that will narrow the list down, or if you don't choose a unit number, it gives you everything at that street number, and the list is alphabetized, and you can just scroll through it. So there are a few buildings throughout town which have many, many units in them. I'm just not sure there is one in District 4. So again, I'll check off a voter or two. Now let's say I made a mistake. So now if I try clicking on it, I cannot adjust that and uncheck that voter without calling over the moderator or the assistant registrar. So as you know, anytime you need to do something unusual, like reverse a check, or we'll get into inactivating a voter, or restoring a voter or transferring a voter, all of those are going to require a password and authorization from the assistant registrar or moderator who has that information. So I'm going to authorize myself here. To uncheck that voter, and you will see that that voter Priscilla was unchecked. Okay, so I'm going to do this another 300-400 times during the day. Okay, and it's simple, easy peasy. Only one hand can keep one hand tied behind your back and check off all these voters. Now, there's 3 more things that happen during the day, right? The first is people need to be restored to the list. So what does that mean? We restore inactive voters. An inactive voter was made inactive by a decision by myself and my Democratic colleague Mary, okay, because either the post office told us this person moved out of town, that person has not voted in 4 consecutive elections, so we sent them a letter and said, we're going to make you inactive if we don't hear back from you. Or in some cases, it could be another state has informed us that you've registered in that other state, okay, and you can't be registered in more than one place at a time, so we remove your registration and make you inactive. Inactive does not mean you cannot vote. It just means we have a couple of questions we'd like to ask you, like, did you move, or were you in college, or whatever the case is. And once we understand what was going on, and which is what happens in 99.9% of the cases, we give you a new voter registration card. Your name is written in the paper book, and you are restored here on the electronic checker book. If you want to know a situation where somebody is not reactivated, it may be somebody, we've had this where somebody, we were told they moved out of town, they came to vote, they said, oh, no, that was an error, so they re-registered. After the election, we sent their welcome letter. The welcome came back from the post office. Okay, said they're not there. This happened 3 elections in a row. At this point, we had to confront the person and say, we have absolutely no proof you live here. And they're like, yeah, you're right. And that was the end of it. So it happens. Doesn't happen that frequently. So let's say, however, you have to restore one of those inactive voters. You go up here to the tab that says Restore Inactive Voter. And you'll notice everything is turned into green and yellow and these bright colors. That indicates you're somewhere out of the ordinary, okay? So I can go to any street because any voter who appears on this screen in green is going to be inactive. You will notice now if I look at this particular voter, I do not see a check mark here. Okay, so I can't go in and just check them off. Instead, you'll notice there's a magnifying glass. I click on that. It gives me a little bit more information about the voter. Okay, voter has not voted. This is the correct polling location, person's birth date, etc. Maybe I can make sure it's the same person. And I want to restore that voter. So again, you are restoring because either the moderator or the assistant registrar has come over to you and said it is okay to restore this voter. So they're going to either whisper in your ear or type in the password, and you're going to indicate also who they are, who authorized this restoration, and click restore. The voter has been restored and checked off, and you see them checked off over here. Okay, so that is restoration. Normally, I would give you time to practice it, but you're not here, so I can't. So I'm just going to do one more myself. Find the voter, magnifying glass, click on restore voter, and enter the password and who authorized it. Doesn't like my password. Voter's been restored and checked off. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the plain old in-person voters where we were just checking people off without having to get these passwords, etc. And there's a couple more situations I want to show you. The first is, shucks, I can't display it on this particular computer, but there are about 5 people who live in the town of Greenwich who have permission from the Secretary of State's office not to reveal where they live. That information is not included on the paper list. It's not included when somebody gets a list of voters from our office, and it's not included in your notebook. What is included is their name, and anyone who has their address suppressed, as we call it, if there's somebody like that in your district, there will be at the very top of the list a street called address suppressed. If you click on the street, it'll actually show you all 5 of the people in the town of Greenwich whose address is suppressed, but you won't be able to mark them, all 5 of those off as voting. You'll only be able to mark off as voting the one that's actually in your district. The rest of them will have little icons, and you'd actually be moving them into your district. So you don't do that. In this particular case, there is no one in this particular district who has a need to hide their identity through that address confidentiality program. So, so I mentioned moving. So, in addition to inactive voters, we sometimes have voters show up at the polls who are registered to vote on the other side of town, but they've moved. So, as a result, let's just say that they moved from Byram to North Mianus. They know all their neighbors in North Mianus all vote at the North Mianus school, so they head over there on election day. The moderator does not turn them away. The moderator says, welcome. They fill out a new voter registration card. We call up New Lebanon to make sure that they haven't voted in their old polling place. They are deleted from the book. And at the new polling place, North Mianus, they are written into the book in paper, and the checkers have to transfer the voter. So once again, we need to find one of these voters that is an unusual case. And the way we find voters outside our district, as you will see here, there's a checkbox, display voters in this district only. If I uncheck that, I suddenly see every vote, every street in town. And obviously there'd be a lot of scrolling if you tried to work through this, and that's why this checkbox is the default situation. Okay. So let's just say again, we're here in District 4. So I'm going to transfer somebody from another district into District 4. So I'm going to find my own record on Sweetbriar Lane, number 3. And here I am, Fred DiCaro. And I click on the magnifying glass. And you will see it says transfer voter. It also says voter has not voted, which is good. So remember I told you that for the paper checker, there's these phone calls being made, etc. For you, none of that is done. You just click transfer voter and the computers talk to each other. But first, you're going to have to answer 3 pieces of information. The first is going to be to put in that password. The second is going to be who authorized this transaction. And the third is going to be the new address of the voter. Now, this is an informational field. It doesn't get immediately put into any database, so it doesn't have to be spelled correctly. It doesn't have to have zip code. It doesn't have to have city or state. I just need to know the basics of the address. So if it's 40 or 31 South Water Street, that's fine. Okay. Oops. This is fine. Anything that allows me to identify roughly where that place is, because I need to match it up with the voter registration card that that voter provided me when they said they were moving. Okay. So once I've got that information in here, I'm going to click complete transfer. And my computer is going to try and talk to the District 12 computer in the back of the room. So I'm not sure you can see this part. It's like a grayish overlay. It says requesting a voter transfer, please wait. She may have already turned off her computer, which means I'm going to get a timeout error. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you can see, there is a box and it says voter could not be transferred. No response from the voting line computer that can authorize this request. So, as I said, there are situations where the paper checker and the computer checker will be off by 1 or 2. That is a situation where that may happen. That voter could not be transferred. So the paper checker is going to have one more person crossed out than you are. You may want to make a note of it on a piece of paper for later on when you're reconciling. Now, speaking of reconciling, if it's you and the paper checker, okay, and one person says, I think this person came and voted, and the other person says, no, I don't think so, the paper checker wins. Okay, the paper checker is still considered the official record of the election. So we have to defer to them, unless, of course, we just know they're just not doing it right. But for the most part, they are doing it right. We have fairly seasoned official checkers, and we're not finding that they're off at the end of the day. So as the day goes on, you'll be able to see how many people you've checked off just by looking in the upper right corner here. You can see I've checked off 5 people in person. The checker has a tally sheet. They'll also be able to take a look if they're using it and say, yep, I've checked off 5 people so far. And the ID checker next to them, they also have a tally sheet. So hopefully at that moment in time when the moderator stops the line for 10 or 15 seconds every hour, okay, you'll all have 5 or whatever that number is, and you'll continue to stay closely in sync throughout the day. If that number increases and suddenly you're at 20, that's a serious problem, okay, and we would probably send people over to start, counting and attempting to reconcile this. But for the most part, if you're talking to your partners during the day, you're not going to get into that situation. Okay, so let's see, we've done inactive, we've done restore, we've done address suppressed, and now we've done this. So I don't believe there's any other type of voter who's going to walk in that is going to require you to do something special as a computer checker. But there are other mishaps that happen. So the first one is the computer simply goes down, okay? For whatever reason, things are super slow, as happened before, or you can't get online. For the most part, most of the things we can fix remotely. We also have a technician in the office. But the first thing you always want to just try and do is reboot the computer and possibly this program. How do you do that? Rebooting the computer is not something I'm going to go over here. That's specialized to the computer itself. But I can show you how to sort of restart the browser. Okay, so if I have the browser open, I can click the X and completely close the browser. Okay, and then I click the check mark, and it's going to restart the browser, and it's going to restart voter checklist exactly where I was. Well, excuse me, not exactly where I was. It's going to restart the program. I need to get back to where I was by clicking a few things. Choosing the election, clicking start. Confirming where my backup disk is. Okay, and now you'll see all the same streets again. So if you have questions, now is a good time to unmute. I will show you how we close the polls, and I'll also show you a couple of other troubleshooting items. But I'm happy to also take questions at this point. If there are any, you can shout them out, or I'll keep on talking until I hear a question. So, related to troubleshooting. Oh, Eugenia, do you have a question?
Yeah, it seemed like I think for the last 2 or 3 times I was at the Greenwich Greenwich Town Hall, I always have problem with the computer. It's so slow. Once I go the voter search, and it's so long to get back to the in-person votes. And I told John about it because it's very slow.
Yeah, so we actually met with the programmer of the computer of
Uh-huh.
this system over the summer.
Uh-huh.
Basically, we've heard a lot of complaints about that even in the special election.
Exactly.
And so he made some tweaks, which we believe have improved performance significantly.
That's why I always tell John. I said I don't want to do the voter list. Give it to the other day because it's so hard to get back on the voter list.
Yes. So, yes, if you continue to have that, I would advise you to let me know.
Okay.
I do believe that he's run some benchmarking tests, etc., and it's much faster.
Okay. But the other lady doesn't have any problems. Only on my computer. The computer that I'm using. But the other, because there's 2 of us, so she has no problem. I have the problem.
He took a couple of the computers that were having the problem to his office specifically to look at them.
Okay.
And I believe everything is running fine now. But again,
Oh.
we run a poll worker survey after every election. I do want to remind you of that. Mary and I, my counterpart, are the only people who see that survey. No staff sees that survey. The first selectman does not see that survey. It is just the 2 of us. So you can be completely honest related to how you feel things are operating at the election, how your training is going, situations like this. If your fellow poll worker deserves more recognition or should not be invited back. we take all of that seriously into consideration. Okay? I'm going to say yes, okay to that. So, Marguerite, you had a question, or you're clapping your hands. I'm not sure.
Unmute here. I just wanted to say thank you. Following or during the special election in August, the tech people had beautifully taped down all of the computer wires between the tables. It was the best job I've seen so far. So thank you very much and to them for having done it that way.
Well, let us know if that happens again this time, so we'll know if it's if there was a one-off, or to find out if there was a particular person on their team who's exceptionally good at that.
Well, find out who it was in District 16. And whoever did that did a fabulous job, the best I've seen yet.
Okay.
And it really was safe for everybody.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I want a couple of other troubleshooting things I want to go over. So the first is, as I mentioned before, this is just a web browser, okay? So when we go and we're transferring, or when I pull down a report, etc., it just opens additional tabs in the browser. You could always just go back and close those tabs, and your first tab here will always be your main set of reports and your main action window. And of course, as I mentioned before, also, if for some reason you close the browser, you just restart it and you'll be good to go. Now, if your computer does go down, we do not stop the line. We give each paper checker a purple highlighter. And this is the second thing that I ask you to write down if you're going to take notes. And that is, if you're having any trouble with the computer, remind the paper checker about the purple highlighter. The idea behind that being, it's a very low-tech way to allow the paper checker to know what records that have been completely checked off by him or her, or only checked off by them without you, so you can reconcile. So if for some reason your computer's restarting, that person should get out the purple highlighter, and as voters pass through, mark them down, but instead of crossing through their names with the pencil, highlight them with the purple highlighter. Later on, when you have free time, you start at the beginning of the book, you look for all those people, he reads those names off to you, you record them, and you guys are back in sync. So people keep on saying to me, you talk about these purple highlighters, no one seems to know where they are. The paper checkers don't know. This year, the paper checkers got an envelope that specifically has information in them, and each one of them has their own purple highlighter. So there should no longer be any concern about where these things are, can they be found, etc. Okay? So that's how the paper checker can help you. How can you help the paper checker? Well, as you're going through the day, if there's a question about who voted or a particular street or something, and you guys have a difference, you can click here in the upper right-hand corner where it says very lightly, View Reports. Once you've clicked on View Reports, it's going to bring up in a new tab a series of reports. Click on Who Voted. So Who Voted, if we scroll down, shows me everybody who has voted in this line in the polling place in street order. So what you see here actually is, even though we only had 5 in-person votes, we got actually more than 20 or 30 votes because we had a lot of absentee ballots. So if we look down here, we will see 193 Byram Road, there's John Vecchioli. He's already voted by absentee ballot. Okay. My new assistant, Tracy Carney, Kathy Lesta, and absentee ballots. all of these people have already voted by absentee ballot. Wow, it's amazing how many of these people I actually know. So, I mean, they're poll workers. So that's great that so many of them have taken the time to become to already have filled out their absentee ballot. But the important part is this report shows only those people who have voted. So it's pretty easy for them to match this up with any cross-offs they have in their book. I would not suggest, although this is in street order, trying to read every name. Instead, I might say, okay, Morgan Avenue, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oxer Place, I have 1. Peck Avenue, I have 8. 180, excuse me, Peck Avenue, I have 1. And so if you know it's just 1 or 2 or 3, it's easy to move through that quickly, right? If they say 6 and you have 5, you stop them and you look for what that difference is. Okay? Don't get confused by the fact that the street number is in fact 184 Peck Avenue, which is confusing the heck out of me. Why it is that's a street number, but it's neither here nor there for the purpose of the election. Okay, so what we were talking about this being a browser, and you can see now that there are a couple of additional windows that have been opened in tabs. If I close those, the main tab again remains voter checklist. So now it's 8 o'clock. The polls have closed, and you're going to sit back. Maybe you open up a little bag of chips, maybe you get a little coffee cake or something, a little snack or something, and you're not going to pack your stuff up and just walk out the door. You're going to give the paper checker next to you a few minutes to count up her data, okay, to see whether or not you guys match. Now, if she's been using a tally sheet during the day, she may already know that you guys match, and you don't have to worry about it. But if she's not, and that is a lot to have to cross through people, find them, and then also do a separate tally sheet, you need to wait for her to count up all her cross-offs, etc. And then if there is a difference, try and see what you can do to reconcile them. We're not saying spend an hour there, but it would be great to spend 15 or 20 minutes to try and help out your partner. You never know. At some point, you may want to be a book checker. And to me, it's the worst of all the jobs. It's kind of high pressure in a way, because we specifically have to give a report to the Secretary of the State on how many people were checked off. And I've been in a situation where a book checker did not do a good job. They didn't add the stuff up correctly. And I get back something from a polling place that says 1,000 votes were cast, but only 500 people were checked off. That's not a situation you want to be in at 2 a.m. Okay, and suddenly have to start counting that stuff up yourself. All right, so after you've given that 15 minutes and everybody is happy, nice, you've had your coffee cake, etc., you should close the polls. In order to close the polls, you click here in this center button that says close the poll. It's going to ask you to type in YES. Click close the polls again. And at this point, there's a dialog box here. I'm not sure if you can see it. It says the polls are now closed. And no matter how hard I try, if I find voters and I want to check them off, I can't do it. Oops. I could press that 1,000 times. The voter's not going to be checked off. So at that point, the system is locked. No more changes can be made. You can definitely make sure everything is ready to be closed up. So I will take questions. Raise your hand or just unmute yourself, whatever is easiest. Eugenia, if you're, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I unmute myself. Now the paper checkers, they would have, because the last time I was there, the last special election, I don't think she even used the purple purple pen or because there were some that came by that voted, and it was not on my list, so I wasn't able to do it. So I told her can you use your purple pencil to check those residents.
If you're having a problem, talk to the moderator. Don't, I mean, yes, ask the person nicely, but if they're not doing it, we need them to do it. Otherwise, it's never
Well,
gonna
maybe,
reconcile.
yeah, maybe because it was a special election, but that's why I had an issue in that last August.
Okay,
But they know that they're supposed to use those paper.
absolutely,
Purple.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay, other questions?
Yes.
All right, so I will remind you that I'm gonna take this recording, convert it and post it on YouTube and put it up on our website. Once I do that, we will send out the instructions on where to find it and also a reminder of next week's Zoom call, where if you have additional questions or you want to hear questions or complaints by others, you can do that. It will be paper checkers as well as electronic poll book checkers. And aside from that, I will see you bright and early on Election Day, November 2nd. I don't think daylight savings time occurs before the election in this case, so I don't think we get that extra hour's sleep. So sorry about that.
Okay.
All right,
Fred?
any other questions for me?
Yeah, Fred, Marguerite here.
Sure.
Could you just you probably can't do it anymore. You've closed out the election. But could you remind us where on the screen do you go to find the list? There's the electronic person go to find the list of people who voted.
Sure. And yes, I can continue to do that. So in the upper right-hand corner, when I'm in the place where I normally just check off voters,
What does it say? I can't read it on the screen.
it says view reports. It's teeny weeny, the text. Okay.
That's it. Okay, perfect.
So that's going to give you a list of reports which are coming.
Right, and that's where
And
we.
you on who voted. And here it is in order, in street order, alphabetized by street.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Is that new?
It's relatively new, within the last year. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
That's the view report.
All right. Well, then I wish you all a great night. I'm going to head out from town hall and head home. Thanks. I got a thumbs up. I appreciate it. And you guys have a great night and let's all have a great election.
And happy
Okay.
Halloween.
Thank you. And we'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Good night, Fred.
Thank you so much.